I'm going to show you how to play a keyboard synthesizer with an arpeggiator in a way that I find incredibly inspiring. It doesn't matter which synth you use because the arpeggiators are all the same at their core, and this only requires the basic functionality. If you already have basic to pretty good keyboard skills and you still find yourself confounded by the arpeggiator, then this video is for you. I've been there. I knew chords, progressions, voice leading, had good timing, and the moment I turned on the arpeggiator, every time it just sounded like the worst classical music I had ever heard. We'll be covering 3 simple moves. They aren't hard and fast rules, but they're what I've found to be the most important guidelines to keep you focused on what matters most while playing. Each move has a predictable, basic sound to it, but when combined, they give you the ability to meet your listeners' expectations or subvert them at will. So make sure you stick around till the end and give all 3 fair consideration, because that's where the magic is. I also made a PDF covering all these topics. It's free to download below if you're interested. Let's get started. The patch or sound design doesn't really matter for what we're doing because this method works with everything. I'm just going to use a triangle wave with no filter and a touch of reverb. But that being said, I think sound design with an arpeggiator is a really interesting topic, so leave a comment if you agree or have any tips that you'd like to share with the rest of us. Your arpeggiator settings definitely do matter. Let's talk about the latch or hold function. Latch makes it so when you pick up your hands, the arpeggios don't stop. That may seem like it makes things easier if your hands are slow, but it's a double-edged sword because when you do play another set of notes, the arpeggio restarts. This can be a cool rhythmic effect, but can also be jarring if your timing isn't perfect. If you don't use latch, the arpeggio will continue even if you change notes partway through. Giving us a smoother sound, which is better for the style that we're going for in this video. I'm going to have my arpeggiator at 120 BPM in up mode, which is really just to make the video easier to follow along with. All this stuff works regardless of the direction or the order of the arpeggio, and I do play with the different options there. And we'll be going up 3 octaves. Okay, on to the first concept, voice leading. This may sound intimidating, but you actually don't need a strong knowledge of theory to be able to put this into practice. Let's look at a C major chord, and I'll turn off the arpeggiator for this. Each note in this chord is called a voice, C, E, and G. And when we progress to a new chord, each voice will have a place it wants to go. It's up to you to listen closely and find out where that is. Voices don't like to move far. In fact, we're going to say that moving a voice any more than a whole step or 2 keys is forbidden. Staying still is allowed though. Let's try with the arpeggiator off for starters in the key of C. So we're just going to play white keys. And with the arp on, there are a lot of options with basic chords like this, but it's actually kind of hard to make it sound good. The problem is that we're not in a sound world that's encouraging us to open our minds. It's too basic, so the expectations end up really high for things like timing, avoiding wrong notes, and overall getting a consistent sound to the arpeggio. So we're going to leave that world of basic chords behind, and instead try to play something more interesting that releases us from any expectations of perfection, and hopefully that'll encourage real inspiration in the moment. We'll just add 1 note to what we're playing. It can be any note, as long as you resolve it to something in key, using the voice leading rules. Nothing moves more than a whole step. Try a major 7th chord by adding a B to our C major chord. Cool. Let's try adding a B flat. And it resolves to a B. All right, how about an A flat? Or I could resolve it the other way. You might already see how you can build longer lines with this. Just chain them together until it feels like it's time for something else. That thing you'll need to switch it up is the second move I'm going to teach you. But before we do that, there's one more thing I should mention. Voices can also split in two by moving up and down at the same time. By that same token, they can combine by two notes moving to the same note. We can also add and subtract voices as we see fit. Give this a try. Maybe pause the video and give it 5 or 10 minutes to sink in. The next technique is passing the arp up and down the keyboard. This requires two hands. We'll start by going high to low. Hold down a chord with your right hand. Let's use that C major 7 from before, but up an octave. We'll just hold it down until we're ready to make the move. Let's play the same chord in our left hand, down lower. And release the right hand when you're ready. Okay, that's kind of smooth for not being super smooth, but now let's try to get the timing right. In up mode, you basically have the whole last octave of the arpeggio to put down your left hand and the whole first octave of the next arpeggio to pick up your right hand to get a perfect transition, which is actually tons of time if you do it in the right order. It's kind of fun. Although I wouldn't worry too much about perfect timing in general, because once you have a lot of notes going or use a different arpeggiator mode, it just may not be a priority anymore. But going down in octaves like this works really well. So doubling the same notes. It may be one of the smoothest ways of transitioning between registers, which is kind of amazing considering it's definitely the easiest. You can also do it partway through a progression. Just recognize that wherever you switch octaves is going to be emphasized. Just passing the arp around on the keyboard sounds pretty horrible on its own, but trust me, it'll totally save you when you get tired of all the voice leading. Just sprinkle it in when you need to switch things up. Overdo it and it'll lose its effect. Go ahead and pause the video again and try it. Okay, time for the third move. This is another totally different place to take your playing. We're going to split our one-handed chord voicings between our hands, like this. If you haven't done this before, it's best to keep it simple. Just double one of the notes from your right hand in the left, down an octave. So with our C major 7, I could double any of the notes and it'll be fine. Once you get comfortable with that, try making it so you don't double notes. So if you play the note in the left hand, then you actually pick it up in the right hand. So I'll do that with the C right now. Or you can try doubling two notes with the left hand. Or maybe play a bass line that isn't perfectly related to the chord, but is still in key. The purpose of this move is to switch things up in a completely different way. We get these great rhythms and strange time signatures that can lead to new ideas or just disorient our listener when things are getting too comfortable. But we're not just making the most complicated chord possible. Simplicity is a good thing. It makes our playing feel focused and intentional, even if you do something disorienting. Pause the video one last time and play around with this. In this last section of the video, I'm going to demonstrate these three concepts working together. So if you find yourself making the moves, but it's still not working, you can use this to fill in any gaps. And of course, if you have any questions, this is a small channel, just leave a comment and I'll do my best to answer. I think it's also worth mentioning that if you focus too much on making these moves and not being in the moment and listening, then that's also not going to work. The point of practicing these different moves is to free you up, to free your mind when you're actually playing, so you can not think and just react, because that's really the point. It's not to follow a bunch of rules. It's to really do the opposite of that. So when you're playing, after you've practiced all the different rules, I definitely am going to encourage you to just throw it all away. Don't worry about any of it. And that's what I'm going to do. So those are the 3 basic moves that have led to my most inspired moments with an arpeggiator. On their own, maybe they could lead to something, but when combined, it's pure magic. To recap, the moves are voice leading, primarily with one hand, passing the arp to the other side of the keyboard, and splitting voicings between the 2 hands. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you found this tutorial useful and maybe even enjoyed it. See ya.